Welcome. Thank you. I'm Shoto. I'm the Sukansu and the Shisui here at SokukoJi Buddhist Monastery, which means I help keep things going, trying to help with the programming and the property upkeep here. I just want to invite anyone who finds value in these teachings to please participate either by joining us for the Dharma talks from either Sokuzan or his monks, his students. Join us for any of the book studies throughout the week, even just one time throughout the week would be great to see you in our Zendo or to join us online. We could really use your help with your practice, joining us, and also financially to help us keep the programming going here. So thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Myoka, and I will be giving the Dharma talk this evening. Sokuzan has asked me to pick a line from the Hokkyo Zanmai, the Song of the Jeweled Mirror Samadhi, is one of the translations that we use of that chant that we say that currently we aren't saying it in our morning service, but we alternate between that and Sandokai. The line I picked is, in its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. And I also found another translation that is used by it was on the Upaya Zen website. So minute, it enters where there is no gap. So vast, it transcends dimension. So minute, it enters where there is no gap. So vast, it transcends dimension. And I'll go back to the translation we use. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. I thought I would say a little bit about Hokkyo Zanmai and its Wikipedia entry. It says, the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi, also translated as Song of the Jeweled Mirror Samadhi and Sacred Mirror Samadhi. It's a Chan Zen poem in the classic Chinese that appeared during the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279. The work is often attributed to Dongshan Liangji, or the Japanese translation of his name is Tozan Ryokai, the founder of the Caodong Soto branch of Chan Zen Buddhism. It seems like there is a little question of, the exact origin or provenance of it, but for our purposes, we won't go into any of that today. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. The Song of the Jewel Mirror Samadhi starts out the teaching of thusness. And so I was looking at that line in terms of thusness, and thusness has also many translations of as it is, just this, and numerous others. So when we try to, or if we endeavor to look at thusness through any of these lines in Sandokai, how can we do that? It seems so indescribable yet so many teachers have pointed at thusness using words. I'm not sure why I picked this line. It just stood out to me when I was looking through last night at when I was assigned to present something on the jeweled mirror samadhi. And when I looked at in its fineness, I wasn't sure what it meant by fineness. The other translation says so minute. So for me, that brought up something perhaps small, but it also seemed like the word precise might work in that also. The rest of the line is it fits into spacelessness, or the first part of the line. So fineness as presented with spacelessness seem to present as a dichotomy between looking at something so fine yet also understanding it in vastness. And then the second part of the line is in its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. Some other words I looked at and concepts that I think this line or that showed up for me that I could apply it to, other than thusness, awareness. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness, and its greatness is utterly beyond location. The word consciousness, Buddha nature, enlightenment, life. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness, and its greatness is utterly beyond location. It seems like many of the lines in the Hokyo Zanmai that are talking about thusness also seem helpful in looking at other concepts around what is showing up in front of us. A line in the Heart Sutra popped out to me when I was thinking about this topic of thusness. In the English translation that we have by Red Pine, it says, therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no memory, and no consciousness. And then I kind of skipped down to no knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. No knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment. That in particular, when I was looking at in its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. No knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment stood out to me as this line from the Hokyo Zanmai, as again, most of them seems to have, or it's very hard to find a form in it. I mean, I can make up forms, and even when I was thinking about whether fineness meant, as it says in the second translation, minute, that seemed to me one way of translating that. But when I think of there is no form, no knowledge, no attainment, and no non-attainment, then any direction I seem to want to take with it, it just kind of fell apart. Another thing I looked at is the Diamond Sutra. Number 22 in this red pine version of the Diamond Sutra. He says, Saputi, what do you think? Did the Tathagata realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment? The Venerable Subhuti replied, no, indeed, Bhagavan, the Tathagata did not realize any such dharma, Bhagavan, as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. The Buddha said, so it is, Subhuti, so it is. The slightest dharma is neither obtained nor found therein. That is called unexcelled perfect enlightenment. And the part in that that stood out to me in relation to, in its fineness, it fits into spacelessness, and its greatness is utterly beyond location, is that there is the slightest dharma is neither obtained nor found therein. Thus it is called unexcelled perfect enlightenment. So if I look to find something in this line from Hokyo Zanmai, it seems like a particular way of pointing at thusness, but what is it we could find therein? And then this also leads to the next line of it, of the Hokyo Zanmai, which says, a hair's breadth deviation will fail to accord with a proper attunement. And in this line from the Diamond Sutra, it says the slightest dharma. So I was relating that to a hair's breadth deviation. And this is also just kind of picking at very small details of what I can look at, but at the same time, those details seem to end up in that spacelessness or greatness that is utterly beyond location. And then I also read number 23 from the Diamond Sutra again. 23, furthermore, Subhuti, undifferentiated is this dharma in which nothing is differentiated. Thus is it called unexcelled perfect enlightenment. Without a self, without a being, without a life, without a soul, undifferentiated is this unexcelled perfect enlightenment, by means of which all auspicious dharmas are realized. And how so? Auspicious dharmas, Subhuti, auspicious dharmas are spoken of by the Tathagata as no dharmas. Thus are they called auspicious dharmas. So once again, there seems to be a pointing at something undifferentiated and then differentiated, but also it shows up in this number 23 as auspicious. So how can something be undifferentiated but auspicious? It seems like if you were looking at this line and there is fineness, it seems like fineness could be very differentiated. However, if I think about it as a feeling, then fineness, how could that be differentiated? It seems like a feeling of fineness or some kind of subtlety might be quite hard to nail down as something differentiated. And that opens up into, for me, the spacelessness or the vastness. And then I don't know what to do with it. I have to look at another line in the chant. Another area I looked at in Sokuzan's teaching, his book 60 Seconds Sokuzan. His 60-second enlightenment has no substance, which is number 11 in here on page 13. Enlightenment has no substance. Enlightenment, awakening, has no substance. There's nothing there. This has prompted some teachers to speak about this in different ways. His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, whom I have quoted dozens of times, when he was dying in 1981, he said to Vajra Regent Oso Tenzin, nothing happens. Enlightenment has no substance. You can't find that, you can't locate it, but the ego mind, the subjective mind, the self-centered mind is constantly looking for something. If you think you've found something, you haven't. If you think you've not found something, you haven't. Any thoughts you have about anything are missing the point. What is the point? Just this as it is. And I would indulge in putting in thusness. As long as you're living to standards, then you just die and you come back 100 years later, born again. Not you, you're not born. Consciousness is born. It's just this. Every time you sit down, this was what Dogen was trying to point out in the 13th century. This is the Buddha. So I think each of these lines, here he's talking, Sokuzan is talking about enlightenment has no substance. But any of these lines in the Hokyo Zanmai, like the one I picked out, that I go into, it seems very hard to find a substance. In its fineness, it fits into greatness, into spacelessness, and its greatness it is utterly beyond location. It seems very hard to find some kind of substance in that, yet all of these lines create or bring out some kind of curiosity in me towards what's being said. Another 60-second Sokuzan I looked at, number 25, was observing. Number 25, the tendency of the mind is to fixate, to protect an imaginary person. We want to have a reference point. Are we doing okay? Is this good? Is it working? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? We have these little conversations with ourselves. Observing doesn't fixate. If you're actually observing, you won't latch on to anything. The way I teach this is not about developing a really good meditator or becoming more and more aware. That's just, I've decided not to swear. Stupid. How's that? Shikantaza is observing what this is, and that comes and goes and gets larger, gets smaller, gets lighter, gets darker, and so on. Constant change, fluctuation, just receive. And that way, you personally get to actually look at whatever's moving in your mind stream, and that is your object of meditation. The part that jumped out at me on this one in terms of the Hokyo Zanmai is when I read this, especially initially, I'm looking for a reference point in any of these lines, a reference point that I can hold on to, like, oh, I get that. I get what it's saying. But I find that what we're encouraged to do is to observe that, wanting to know something about what I would call relatively deep lines about the nature of thusness that these teachers, or perhaps one teacher, has shared with us. And then the last thing that I looked at that I wanted to kind of bring into this is in this line, it talks about the second half of the line is, in its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. In SokukoJi's Order of Immediate Light, in the guiding tenets, location shows up at the very end of the third tenet, but I will read all three. They're not long. SokukoJi Order of Immediate Light, guiding tenets. Consciousness always finds its own form. Number 2, the form consciousness finds is empty as it appears and full as it is. Number 3, as consciousness finds its own form, it can actually disown territory and may lose or gain any implied parameters of personhood or otherness without acceptance or rejection. Though they are observed, nothing is gathered, nothing is held, nothing is rejected. This includes any and all forms, uniforms, or traditions of the Buddha's Dharma. In this way, the path is always open to be what it is, as it is. Consciousness always finds its own form, with and without status, with and without location. In its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. Again, in the Hokyo Zanmai. And in its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. And in the tenets, it says with and without location. When I've thought of location recently, and I don't remember where or how it came up, but I've been thinking, I think it was in either Sokuzan's talk, but I'm not sure, or perhaps in another reading we were doing, but location feels, at least recently, I've been thinking about it a lot as here, myself. I'm thinking that I am somebody, I have a location, and it's hard to see that that's an illusion, that location is there relatively. I'm a body, I'm a person living in Michigan. That it seems very difficult to look at that to this point, that solidity of who I think I am is an illusion. I'll go ahead and take questions. If you can, please help me go deeper into this. Hondo.
Hondo bowing. There's this small word called it in that stanza. What is it referring to?
I may be wrong, but I think it's the everything in the Hokkyo Zanmai is about thusness, the teaching of thusness, as it, let me just read the very first line. The teaching of thusness has been intimately communicated by Buddhas and ancestors. So the way I was understanding it, this is written as a teaching of thusness. And even in the history of where this came from, it's attributed to one person, but they're guessing that perhaps it came from multiple teachers. So in that very first line where it says Buddhas and ancestors, that stands out to me as in the it is thusness, and that those either a teacher or several teachers throughout the ages have talked about it.
Wunderbar. So in its fineness, so the teaching or of thusness in its fineness. What is that telling us of, or pointing to there? Fits into spacelessness.
It seems like it's such a huge contrast between fineness and spacelessness and everything in between. And I think it just doesn't allow, well, I guess you can think of it as a lot of little things and something very vast. But anytime you, at least I find anytime I try to get a hold of that, it just seems kind of insane to try to make sense of it with the thinking mind. And yeah, I can grasp on to a fineness. And then as soon as that happens, then something changes. And it's no longer what I thought it was.
Wunderbar. How does this show up on the cushion?
It seems like it shows up in all ways. Anything that shows up, I can dwell on and dig down into its fineness, or be overwhelmed by the spaciousness or the spacelessness, as it says here. And each time we sit down, what's showing up right now is beginner's mind. We're starting all over again. It's never the same twice. So yeah, I think this line stood out to me today on the cushion. If I look through this again, that could be another one. Anything that I determine doesn't seem to last. Elena?
Elena Bowing. So in its finest, something so, if we try to pinpoint it to something so small that it fits into something that has no space, and its greatness is so encompassing that it has no location, how does this all or nothing speak to us about the middle way of Buddhism?
I think I guess my question for you would be, what do you mean by the middle way of Buddhism?
Elena Bowing, taking how do we have all these concepts that are so black and white, so everything and so nothing, but we're still following like the middle path? in Buddhism?
It seems like that's what we do. We take the all and the nothing and return to the cushion. I think trying to seek a middle way. To me, it shows up as just practice. All we can do is practice and practice and practice, and whatever the middle way is, will arise on its own. And yeah, it's very difficult to know what a middle way is for, any person or any situation, or if there is no one and this is all an illusion, then it just seems like there's no finding in terms of the middle way. I haven't found a middle way. But I feel something about it seems like I just need to get back to the cushion and practice. And what it is I need to see. The Sokuzan says no promises, but hopefully I will see it when I need to. You know.
You're down by. I appreciate that you brought in these other references, which at first I wasn't connecting very well, but in talking about the fineness or it being minute on one hand and then great and vast on the other hand. And this is about the teaching of thusness. So is this the only thing I can think about is the subtlety of the teaching and the no substance that you brought in with the 60-second Sokuzan, that there's nothing to really grab onto there. So I wonder if you could also use precision and the vastness is that like the hair's breadth deviation seems to fit in that line too. I thought I had a question. Is this a teaching about emptiness?
The first part where you were talking about precision, I also thought about that word. I thought I said it earlier, but maybe I just imagined. But yes, I think precision may also fit. It's kind of like that word in this other translation, though, minute. Like I could take it in that minute or take, precise. And so fineness seems a little more open to me because it can be related to in many ways. Maybe one time I look at it, it may go into the minuteness, and another time may go into preciseness. It's a very rich word. It'd be interesting to know what the Chinese is. Like a lot of these chants that are chanted come from Chinese or Japanese or that we do. And what was the second part of your question?
I asked if it was a teaching about emptiness.
Yes, I think much of what's in Hokyozanmai and that whole that shunyata or emptiness is something about what we're reading that's not what we think it is, or I could you know, the more I look at the words, the more I could dive into those and as in Sokuzan's thing, look for reference points in his 60-second talk there. Yeah, I think that's what attracts me to these chants and the Sandokai and the Hokyozanmai in the English version is that I can see myself wanting reference points for these things. And then also seeing how they'll even if I do pick some out, they change. So then it all becomes really questionable about what I'm doing with any of them. Are there any questions on Zoom? Oh, no.
Wunderbar. So I want to go back to fineness on the cushion. What, when you say the teaching of thusness, there's what shows up on the cushion, we're looking at movement. What is the fineness of that? Is it, do you have the experience of movement being finer and finer and finer, or more subtle the more you look at the wall?
For me, in this line, it's the huge array of everything that shows up more than something relatively finer and finer. I mean, that I'm sure that happens too, especially if I'm dwelling on some kind of interaction or something difficult in my life, then I can make it finer and finer into a kind of closed situation. But fineness fits into spacelessness. To me, it's at least right now when I'm looking at it, seems to say there's just such a vast array of everything that can show up. And to call one fine one day, that might be vast the next, or the next moment even. So I think it's encouraging me to keep looking and see that I might not be including everything in my fineness that's covering up the thusness part that it's trying to point at.
You divine, so the concepts that are laid out in here are impossible to suss out. Spacelessness and utterly beyond location. How do we even imagine that? So is there a not finding in trying to look at the meaning of these concepts? Is it about that? Bowie?
I'm not sure about the not finding, but whatever is showing up, that's what we can look at. So if I'm reading the line, in its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. In its greatness, it is utterly beyond location. If I'm picking out pieces of it that I like or seem to reveal something to me, then I should just notice that. If I start finding something, and I think that it goes back again to a reference point where I'm grasping at what's being said, it seems important to just, however it arises as I'm reading it, or if I'm sitting and it pops up into my head, just keep noticing.
Yudavang, thank you. What attracted you to these lines? Wow.
I don't know. I was reading through and perhaps somewhat that I hadn't heard anybody talk about that particular line. There's a lot of familiar ones that it feels like people have referenced. And I don't know, whatever I ate last night. I'm not sure. Further questions? Shoto.
Shoto bowing. To go into the Diamond Sutra part you brought up, is the issue like with like that part where it's has the Buddha realized or the Tathagata realized any such dharma as so and so? Is the issue with the word dharma because it means like a thing? Bowing.
That's in number 23, and it says undifferentiated is this dharma in which nothing is differentiated. It almost seems like a reverse of the, in its fineness, it fits into spacelessness. And it's almost like undifferentiated. This is just a first thought is it's differentiated could be spacelessness, and differentiated could be a fineness. In terms of the Dharma, it is a small d Dharma. So I could read that as a teaching. In the end part, he then says, or this says, auspicious dharmas, Subhuti, auspicious dharmas are spoken of by the Tathagata as no dharmas. Thus are they called auspicious dharmas. So is your question, what is the no dharmas part?
I think my question was on a different verse, the one where he asked Subhuti if the Tathagata had realized any such dharma. It was the very first one that he read. Bowing.
I see. So that's number 22. Subhuti, what do you think? Did Tathagata realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment? And the Venerable Subhuti replied, no, indeed, Bhagavan. The Tathagata did not realize any such dharma, Bhagavan, as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. The Buddha said, so it is, Subhuti, so it is. The slightest dharma is neither obtained nor found therein. Thus it is called unexcelled perfect enlightenment. I think that the Dharma is neither obtained nor found. That strikes me as what's important. If we're watching our mind dwell on something again and again and again, our instruction is to return to that and not obtain or find anything. I'm not sure, but that's what this is looking like to me at the moment. Do you have a further question in that area?
Sure, bowing. It seems, especially that last bit of that, it seems like it ties back into that the Hokyozan line that you brought up. If that looks the same to you, could you say more about how that ties back into that, bowing?
Yeah, I think that is the part that this is the part that any of these lines in here in the Hokyozan Mai, not obtaining and not finding seems important in the practice, even though I'm going to watch myself find and obtain things throughout. If I'm giving it attention, sometimes when we're chanting, as you know, these you can be totally absorbed in it or be thinking about something completely different. But even that, I think watching that, not focusing on the words or even giving them attention could also, if we can be aware of that, it seems like that is helpful in neither finding or obtaining something from that. Was there more?
Like,
Tokugawa?
Chokodabowing. Keeps coming up is a quote by Padmasambhava. Seems maybe connected with this. He said something like, "My actions are as precise as a grain of sand, and my view is as vast as the sky or space." Have you heard that? Okay, I guess I'm wondering how. Seems like another explanation of what you're talking about here in a way. Is this something that we can do, or do we contemplate it? Or is it, like you're saying, not finding?
Says neither in number 22 again, it says neither obtained nor found therein. So the way I'm trying to work with that is to look at my obtaining and my finding as my path to I guess not finding is just looking at my finding and my obtaining.
Chokodabowing. Maybe I could, that helped me get to my question a little bit. Can we have the fineness and the vastness at the same time?
You brought up the image of the sand in the sky, and what I thought about earlier was a star. If you look at a single star in the sky, it looks very fine and just a little pinprick. But the vastness of that also, and imagining that as a sun, big huge ball of fire, it really knocks my perspective in a way that I can't, it seems indescribable, where something that looks like a tiny little pinprick of light is actually something bigger than I can imagine.
Thank you.
Jishin?
Jishin bowing. I have also a question in the same area about spacelessness and fineness. When I'm thinking about what it actually what they describe, something which is infinite, unlimited, delicate and subtle. And it's kind of interesting that with my first question is it the description of the space? And the second question is how do you see our tendency to look always for something more concrete? Even in your last response, when you were talking about looking at the space, you were bringing stars and sun, and just wondering what is that desire in us to always find something, and if we find it has to be, of course, something concrete. So maybe I shouldn't connect those two questions, but I did already. Bowing.
No, I think that it's helpful, because I think that finding that me finding the star and that example is my belief in a self, like that I'm somebody that can dream up or think up something as an example. It's not that I shouldn't do that, but at the same time, I could get very hooked in that and, wow, look what I thought up, and I'm this great, philosopher or something that came up with this great example. And I think I can see myself doing that over and over again, if not out presenting it to somebody in my own mind, coming up with all kinds of imaginary ideas about what I'm reading in the Hokkyo Zanmai, and doing that. I think I'm going to keep doing that, not intentionally, but it's just thought and nerve endings and mind, and I receive an input and I want to do something with it, and watching that on the cushion or in daily life, it's showing me what is in front of me, and teaching me how, or giving me a chance to look at that. And in that, I think there's a fineness and a spacelessness, if I'm not too busy making stuff up to cover it.
Thank you, Jin Bowing. I always have a feeling when I'm attracted to the verse, and you chose something yesterday, and I'm wondering how different it is when I'm looking at the verse and I'm trying to understand that verse mentally through my mind and connect with, which I appreciated actually, what you brought, other teachings. But I'm just wondering how different it is to analyze and find intellectual understanding of it versus just to be with that feeling which it is evoked by that verse. And it feels to me that being with that feeling is that spacelessness and that fineness which perhaps it brings. How different it is for you, Bowing?
It seems to vary a lot. Like sometimes that shows up where I can be very enamored with what I'm reading, and other times my mind will just wander, or when I'm reciting it, I will have other things that present themselves in my vision, or I hear something, or my thoughts. It's quite varied. But I do, yeah, sometimes I do get very enamored with it, and being assigned to look at it is helpful for me. And it makes me think about other teachings in these other books and forms that other teachers have put down through the years, and see what it is. They're all pointing at something, and they're all pointing at thusness, or as it is, or just this, in their own way. It taking one line and looking at how that, which facet that is perhaps using to take us into that, and seeing that it's not different from any other one, or any other way we or another person might look at the teachings. So was that.
Do you see a difference between the concept of thusness and suchness and as it is? And if you do, can you see a difference? Can you say something about why each one of those is described that way? Or you could just say they're all the same. Get out there, get out of there really quick.
It seems, my understanding is that they're all the same as a translation of the same. I don't know which word, I've forgotten.
One more question then. Why would they have different names? What's that about?
It looks like each teacher, or when that showed up in time or translation, they were working with what they saw. And I give them the benefit of the doubt in that.
Thank you.
Is there a final question this evening? Elena?
Elena Bowing. So I was thinking that if it's something that cannot be obtained or found, then it can be a subject or object. Is there a reference point that isn't either subject or object? And how could looking at subject and objects show us something that is beyond concept?
I missed the first part of your question about subject and object.
Elena Bowing, can there be a reference point that isn't a subject or an object?
I don't know. It seems like anything that shows up. Anything I know is a subject or an object. In the awareness, it seems like things can show up, but then I might turn it into a subject or an object.
And Elena Bowing, the second part was how this reminds me of SokukoJi says, look at how we can't do something to figure out how to work with it. So how can looking at subjects and objects and reference points lead us into some sort of realization that's beyond concept? Yeah.
it seems like it's talked about as the illusion. We see, or we might be able to see the illusion as it's showing up as all those subjects and objects. And seeing the illusion of that, it seems like the teaching to me, but I don't see that yet, so I still find myself building things with subjects and objects and reference points, and it seems helpful to look at that and see what I'm doing. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for the Dharma talk. We'll stand and dedicate the merit.